BJ Counsel. I view the world through the lens of having been followed by a white clerk as a child while shopping in a five and dime. I'm a retired police executive and own UN50, which gives guidance on surviving interactions with police.
I'm Harmony Chavis, and I view the world through the lens of one of the most misunderstood and diverse generations in our nation's history. I'm a social worker and a believer of radical kindness and love as modalities of healing.
My name is Andrew Counsel. I view the world through the lens of a generational camera phone. I wake up as a black male and go to bed as a black male. I am surviving this never-ending court case we commonly call life in the best way I know how.
All right, welcome back, folks. This is show number 2, and I'm probably not going to count all the shows, but just because we didn't get started until it got way into the new year, because we're not doing as many. I think I mentioned that. For those of you who may have listened to our first one. So thanks for coming back and joining us. For those of you that are here for the first time, my name is BJ, and this is UN50. It's what this organization does primarily is talk to Black and brown folks on how to safely interact with law enforcement and get home safely. And we've been doing this since 2015. And so we bring guests on to talk about anything not necessarily pertaining to law enforcement, but it has a little bit of flavor to it. But just to keep our minds open that policing is a little bit more than just police, it's other things. And we do this in the Bull City. We're out of Durham, North Carolina. So glad you're here. We have Sam Peterson here with us tonight. He is with the Durham Crisis Response Center, and he will tell you a little bit more about what he does for Durham Crisis Response Center, who I love. For those of you that may have listened earlier, we had Latoya, who works there with the homeless shelter. She was on last year. And actually, her show has gotten the most listeners that we have had for podcasts. Her show has got a lot of folks listening to it. So I'm pretty sure Sam's going to rank right up there with her. So before we get started, my co-host, and you know what, Harmony, I'm going to let you. It's you. What's going on?
Every time, what is going on? Every time, it's like I freeze up. Like, what is going on? Like, what am I doing with my life? Turns out, not a whole bunch. I am just doing my best, and I think that's been my motto for 2022. Just doing my best, and I have resigned myself to being okay with doing my best, even if it's not the best. So maybe that'll resonate with somebody.
It will. It resonates with me. And just a little bit, I had to help Harmony out with something the other day, and she she was so nice. I mean, I went to help her out, and then I look at my phone, and she sent me $20 on the Apple thing, right? And it's probably going to stay there because I don't know how to get the $20 off. I'm like, what do I do?
Apple thing. I know what it is, but
it's Apple Pay.
Right.
It's Apple Pay. And I'm like, I'm a boomer. So I got a feeling that $20 is going to stay there. So the next time you see me, you have to figure out how to spend the $20 that you sent me, because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Oh my God. But thank you. I just wanted to put that out there. So,
well, no, thank you. Let me tell people why you came, which is ironic. So you always say that you're old. And the running joke is that, like, we're the millennials. I actually had to go to the audiologist because I swore that I could not hear. Everybody around me was like, dude, this is getting really annoying. Like, are you sure you can't hear, or are you just being difficult? So I needed somebody that could come in the middle of the day to assist with the hearing test. And BJ's the only person I know that's not working during the day. And I was like, you know what? She's really going to get a kick out of this. Like, you're going with me to an audiologist appointment for my hearing. Thankfully, all is well. Turns out I just need to, I guess, pay attention harder when people are talking. But I just thought that was kind of ironic.
It was. Andrew, how you doing, my man?
Doing very well. I usually say still working on adulting. There's 2 things I want to say before I guess I go into things. But I think adulting doesn't really end, of course. So I feel like I'll still be 80 years old, still learning how to manage and balance being an adult. And also wanted to mention a small gem before we start. I think I've always been balancing or trying to figure out, I guess, like a work-life balance and understand the true definition of productivity. So I give my gem at the beginning instead of the end today. But just wanted to say that it's okay not to be productive or define productivity for yourself, and to understand that rest is also productive because you need it to do the rest of your work. And so that's something I've been balancing as of right now.
Wow, I like that. You're absolutely right. Got to take care. Self-care is important. Got to take care of that. Yeah. And rest is productive. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that, Jim. I really appreciate that. Sam Peterson, thank you so much for joining us. Again, DCRC, Durham Crisis Response Center, and this organization here in Durham, who is the organization that handles sexual assault and domestic violence.
Yes.
And he participates in that in educating youth. So I'm not going to even try to describe what he does. I'm going to first let him introduce himself and talk about his position and what he does, and then we'll go from there. Thanks again, Sam, for joining us.
Thanks, BJ. I really appreciate being asked. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Harmony. It's good to see everybody tonight. I'm Sam Peterson, and I work with the Durham Crisis Response Center as their rape prevention and education coordinator. So, what I do is teach rape prevention, which means it can look like going into schools like middle schools and high schools, where I teach a curriculum called Safe Dates and Shifting Boundaries, which are about identifying cues to unhealthy relationships and learning how to prevent them. So, equipping kids with skills to be able to like sit in their anger, identify toxic relationships, things of that nature. And then I go to universities or bar outreach or wherever people will have me, so I can talk about this incredibly important issue, because it's one of those things that people think is over there. It happens to other people,
Right.
but it's really common. It is so unbelievably common. And yeah, so I was delighted when you contacted me, BJ.
Yeah, can you kind of, when you say it's people think it's over there and you're in middle school and high school talking about that.
Hmm.
So kind of give us a little, I mean, I don't want to eyes to glaze over data, but just kind of give us as to what that looks like and what, and again, why do you do, is this your background? I mean, did you do this before you got to DCRC, or, I mean, how did your life journey get you to this spot?
I was actually doing fundraising for gay rights lobby in Texas, and I really didn't want to be involved in politics, but I got all fired up, and that and that, as one does, especially in states like Texas or North Carolina, where things can be an uphill climb sometimes. Um, so that just got a fire under me, and ever since then, I've been working for nonprofits. Before DCRC, I was with Shift NC, which is Sexual Health Initiatives for Teens. So they go into schools and other places, foster care, judicial system, and teach young people sex ed.
Wow. And how long have you been
So,
doing this?
oh,
Not
well,
oh, total. Yeah. Well, how long you been with DCRC? But then, as far as you doing this kind of work, how long have you been doing this specifically? This time.
well, I'm about 100, so I've been doing, I've been doing, this kind of justice work, or whatever you want to call it. I've been fighting for a long time, for probably 20, 30 years, doing various things, but just about a year and a half at DCRC, I guess,
Oh
working
wow.
on my second year. Yeah. Yeah. It's new to me, but it's not, in a way. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, it
Mm-hmm.
feels very familiar. It's about oppression. It's about poverty. It's about race, so it's all in alignment with all the work that I've been doing up till now.
Wow. Wow. And so I want folks to understand that, I mean, it's like, well, how does this relate to, because like I said, we always try to tie in, obviously, the line of law enforcement and the work that I do. And I think the thing that you talked about, that people just sit with their anger, I kind of want you to talk
Hmm.
about that, what does that look like when you're talking to youth to be able to do that? One of the things that for me in law enforcement is the work that you're doing is so critical. Obviously rape, but also the fact that people learning how to communicate,
Hmm.
and the violence that goes with that, which leads to domestic violence and those types of things. And for me, it's about how do we do the work that what you're doing means they don't have to call the popo.
Yes.
If
Right.
they know how to communicate, They know how to sit with their anger and process that. So that's kind of what this for me is just you're doing work that could eliminate people having the need to call 911 and
Right.
having
Like
people end up in a,
another layer of potential violence. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. So, the first thing that I like to teach people or kids is how to identify what is a toxic relationship. And there's just a need for power, which is so strange to me. It's just not the way that I think or move in the world. But it's so what constitutes abuse? It's any kind of behavior, whether done in person or by technology like cell phones or the social media or whatever, that's used to manipulate, to gain control, to gain power over somebody, to make a person feel bad about themselves or other people who are close to them, or to make a person afraid of their partner. And that's what constitutes abuse. So we teach them how to kind of identify cues in relationships to see those points. And then I like to teach them how to identify symptoms of anger or signals of anger. So listen to their body. Like we go over a whole checklist of what's happening in your body to let you know that you're angry. A lot of times we don't know we're angry,
Right. Right.
And there's this narrative too that people have of I was so angry, I couldn't help myself. And a lot of abusers will say that. I just couldn't help myself. But the deal is, you can always help yourself. You do not have to act out in anger. It is a choice. It is absolutely a choice. So what I like to do is, and I think this is really important, is recognizing that between the anger and the action, you have a few seconds to make a different decision. And that means you've got to have some coping mechanisms. You've got to have some calming skills. And what those can look like, what I teach the kids are like breathing, simple, like, taking 10 deep breaths, leave the room,
Yeah, that's always
that's
good.
that's legitimate,
Yeah.
leave the room. Explain that you're too angry to speak right now and you just need a little space and time. And then, I ask them what are some of their calming skills. Like it might be listening to music, going for a walk or biking or, boxing or whatever it is, to give them an arsenal of modalities or things that they can rely on before they act out in anger. It's just real easy for all of us to do. We've all been taught that anger is overwhelming and that anger is powerful and we have no control over it. But it takes practice, but it's really important to learn that you don't have to act out. You don't.
I've got some more stuff for him, so I want to give my co-host time in case you want, because I have a comment about that anger part. But go ahead. Anybody want to jump in?
I was just going to say this is, I think talking about emotional regulation plays into what I talk about all the time when we're talking about, communicating with people and also being able to calm yourself enough when you've been disrespected to keep yourself safe. I think that a lot of folks think that emotional regulation means not reacting to anything, and that's not necessarily what it means to emotionally regulate. And that's something that I'm learning all the time as a survivor of trauma, really learning how to be in my body and read what my body is telling me, and then learning how to navigate it without necessarily responding out of that emotion is difficult for me, a person that's actively in therapy and doing the work. I can only imagine what it feels like to a teenager or a middle schooler that's never even been given the language to match the things that they feel. So I'm so excited to hear that you're doing the work and also not going along with this toxic positivity movement that I feel like is going on right now, where we don't talk about our feelings. We can't be angry. We can't be pissed. Like for so many people, I bet it is just so incredible and also empowering to know, like, oh my God, there's an adult who's telling me that I can be angry and I can feel my feelings and I don't have to deny what I'm feeling, but I can control my actions. So I think it's really important work.
Yeah, and you bring up trauma, which I can connect with personally. I'm in EMDR right now, which is a trauma-related treatment.
Oh yeah, I'm right in the thick of it with you, so I understand.
Okay, awesome. We're kin in that. Yeah, but a lot of these kids, as young as they are, they've already experienced trauma. They're leaving their bodies. They're dissociating. They don't have the language. They're hormonally active and reactive. It's tough. So my heart goes out for these kids. What I'm trying to do is give them an option other than hitting somebody. Like, it's really so simple. Give them some other option and make it clear that is not okay. We teach a lot about consent, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that consent being violated as far as people being touched by police, and, of course you don't have to have consent to be touched by a police officer. That's not the way that our law works. And in a lot of cases, it could honestly be quite dangerous. But that isn't one thing that we've covered on the show is, when people's personal autonomy is violated, how that can automatically initiate a trauma response. And again, that's why I just go back to the emotional regulation part of it, because it's not as simple as, not hitting somebody. For kids that have only been displayed, abuse as forms of love. When I read what is it, All About Love by Bell Hooks, I think that I really was able to be transformed in my understanding of my own abuse and trauma, and that is love and abuse cannot coexist. That's something I go back to all the time. And thankfully, I have had enough of a support system and enough of a tribe that I've had that reinforced. Some of these kids have never in their entire lives had that reinforced. And of course, it leads to people being reactive when they're being touched. I can only wonder how many deaths could have been avoided had people known how to navigate that fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response with some more, like inner wisdom and more of a logical standpoint versus that really primal one. So I think this is a really interesting conversation that probably we won't be able to explore in depth today, but something I've not really thought about, Sam, until we had you on, and the role of consent in policing. And I know it's not something that we can implement in a lot of instances, but who's to say that community policing or moving beyond policing, that this couldn't be a part of something that police integrate into, certain circumstances.
Thank you for mentioning Bell Hooks and also making the point of that's not love, because it is conflated as love for a lot of people. And you've just reminded me to reinforce that message this semester as I enter back into the workforce. Thank you.
So, Andrew, you got anything?
Yeah, I wanted to echo something that Harmony said too about just the work that Sam and that you're doing specifically in the schools working with younger kids. I think we talk a lot about some of the ways how I think BJ talks about there have been calls where people or officers have had to go to certain houses because people can't communicate with the people who they live with. So being able to control impulses and not being able to hit someone after getting into an argument. So I think the age that you're talking to students and kids at is a very malleable age. It's where they learn these things to be able to not do those things in the future. So I think the work that you're doing is commendable and very, very important.
Thank you. I also, when you said that, Andrew, the first thing that came to my mind was, toxic masculinity. And I know this phrase is a little dated, but if I can use that construct, these young boys have already been inculcated in this kind of masculinity, and I hear it from them all the time. So, violence becomes a way of signaling the hierarchy or whatever within their peer groups, and they have already learned that anger is the only emotion they have access to. They've already learned that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think just to quick caveat of what you said as well too. I think sometimes that toxic masculinity trait bleeds into some officers who actually work in the field as well too. And I think that can be a dangerous trait that we also see specifically with dealing with police brutality, and even not even going that far as saying police brutality, but day-to-day interactions that police officers have, and been them not being able to compute, I guess, and understand how to deal with the mental trauma that goes on with working in the police department just in general, because they weren't taught how to handle those emotions. They just kind of build it down and say it's okay, and I have to be a man in order to prove myself and to understand that these emotions don't matter.
Yeah, because vulnerability is seen as a sign of weakness, and it is killing people.
I agree.
Every single day, silence is killing people. I think that this would be a good point to kind of bring back to the mental health thing. I know that we do it every so often, but as we're having this conversation, I couldn't help but think of the young lady. She was Miss USA 2019 that committed suicide. Literally, silence is killing us. Depression has the ability to be a breath taker, a voice taker, a life taker, as we've seen. And I think it's so important that we remind each other and ourselves of the importance of not being silent, especially when you need help, and especially when you're feeling vulnerable, because that's what we're meant to do for each other. We're not meant to exist in silos. So that was just important for me to reiterate, and also, I don't know, to just let people know that you're not alone. There's so many people that are dealing with things that they've never talked about, or they may be in the depths of their own healing. And I'm sure, looking at you, Sam, I'm sure a lot of people don't think, oh, he's a trauma survivor actively working through his trauma and reprocessing. I'm sure people often think the same thing about me. And for me, it's important to bring back to the forefront that we're all human. Mental health is something that we all have. And that you are worthy and lovable and okay just as you are.
This reminds me, if I may, I'm currently working on a personal project that's called Why Live? And it's a series of conversations with people who have struggled with mental health, or have been suicidal, or have been through just dark nights of the soul, really difficult places, about how they got through it, and even thrived, even, managed to get through it and survive and thrive. And it, posits this question, why live? And I just think it's really important that we give platforms to people who have struggled with depression and who have struggled with mental health. And which is, again, getting back to the silencing of people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Sam, can we go back to, I know
Please.
No.
I know I steal your conversation. Sorry, B.
I want to go back to the EMD, and she put it in the chat, but folks are not going to see that. So can you just kind of talk about what the EMD is? Is eye movement desensitization, something like that? Can you kind of elaborate on that, and also just kind of go into what you were just talking about the kids, their anger, kind of the masculinity gives them a hierarchy in that relationship, but also as you do the work in the schools, I just kind of like to hear how, if you could tell that that's probably at home, that masculinity, or how that's how they see it being played out at home, that's the way I'm supposed to. So the EMD, you're looking at these kids, and then back, the work that you do, because it's coming from somebody they're seeing somebody do that.
Yes.
And it says yes to them. So if you can kind of talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think they're seeing not only their family or their parents do it, but it comes from sports figures, it comes from media.
Yeah.
There's an overwhelming ideology of that toxic masculinity, and I think particularly, I can't speak obviously to the Black experience, but I think there's just been a historical movement to silence Black men and to reduce them to to take their vulnerability away, to take their humanity away, which is just soul crushing. Anyway, I'm getting off track probably, but
no, that's fine. No, I want you to speak your truth, man. Clearly you're passionate, and that's what we want you to do. So no, I just wanted to make sure people understood what EMD was, because you use the letters, and I want to make sure folks understand.
Sure.
Articulate that, because they won't see the chat.
Yeah, EMDR is eye movement rapid or
You got it.
desensitization. Yeah,
Reprocessing. You got it. You had it.
reprocess.
Why is it so
Yay!
long?
But anyway, it's taking someone. It's almost a hypnotic sort of experience where a therapist will take you to those places of deep trauma and kind of reprogram you. They use perhaps they'll take their fingers or a pen and go back and forth, and your eyes have to follow this movement while you're thinking of these traumatic events. And there's some kind of reprogramming that happens, some kind of neurological thing that happens, phenomenon that, and I found it to be incredibly helpful. It's been a real gift to me because I've gone to talk therapy and all kinds of therapy, and this is the first thing that's really made a dent.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm really grateful for that.
Harmony's going to she wants me to remind her to do the cultural shift, but I want to go back to the anger and
Hmm.
when you were talking about it kind of goes along with it. Alternative to Violence project that I mentioned to you, and folks want to take a look at that on my website. And it's called Transforming Power.
Mm,
And that basically is that you said it, but the way they say it is that we all have that within us. That little moment where we can shift as to how we're going to resolve this issue, and preferably that power is just to resolve it non-violently,
right.
the conflict. So it's like it's a transformation that we have internally because it's in us to be peaceful. We just need, and the light's in us to do that. The
And it
part
takes
that
practice.
it takes practice. You have to do that. And I also would just like, because for me growing up, I had to go to counseling because I didn't know how to argue. My parents didn't argue in front. I can probably, without the thumb, count how many times I've heard my parents argue. So I did not have a place to understand arguing doesn't mean my relationship is going to end because they never argued in front of me. So for me, anger represents ending relationships, so to speak. So I never was able to, I never knew how to be, I didn't know what to do with that because I didn't know how to articulate being angry because it came out wrong the whole time. It came out violently. I never hit anybody, but few glasses and lamps were broken. So just not having the example of how to argue as well, I think is important as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot of examples of healthy adulthood, and I mean,
Right,
it's, yeah.
right.
And I think, kids, people have children historically very young, and, it's just, we're not formed emotionally sometimes in our 20s or teens. So, yeah, I just feel for these kids because, as you say, they're getting from the home. Maybe they're not they're mirroring bad behavior or repressive behavior. And at school, maybe they're not allowed to express themselves in ways that they need to. And yeah, it's just endless. I don't know what I really can do. I mean, I just do my best. It's an uphill battle though, because things like toxic masculinity, which I believe is at the heart of domestic violence and sexual assault, is endemic. And, everybody's impacted by it. And it's just a narrative that we all believe, whether we want to or not. Women and men and all genders act as if it is some kind of truth, that men are this way and women are that way. Yes, patriarchy is dangerous for us all. Amen.
Yeah. So how does that work when you go into the school system? I mean, obviously you're welcomed. Does everybody say we want Sam to come in and do this for our kids? I mean, is it something that people are clamoring at in the city of Durham to have you come in to provide this kind of work in the schools? Are you popular like that?
The teachers do, yeah. And you know what? A lot of the kids really get a lot out of it. I'm so moved by the response that I get from a lot of the kids. They're really into it. They want to hear about themselves. They want to hear about relationships and sex and love, and and their feelings. They want to hear about themselves. So that they really appreciate. I use a lot of examples of stories. So I'll tell a story about two teens and do a whole like little acting out scenario, and so they can connect with that. They don't want to hear me talking, but to give them examples
Right.
of their peers and what they might go through in these stories, that's something that they can grab onto. And I have a secret weapon, which is swag. I give them presents.
Well, you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So how long is it? I mean, how long are you do you just go to one school for a period of time, or do you go to several schools? So how long is there like the sessions go for this long? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, it depends on the curriculum. There's one curriculum that I generally teach, which is about 6 sessions, and that's safe dates. It's an evidence-based curriculum, so it's pretty smart and thoughtful. I throw in things a little more about consent and about things like sexting, technological abuse than is in the curriculum, because I think it's critical right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harmony, what is this with the cultural shift?
What I was going to say is I know a lot of times when we're having these conversations, we're talking about police reform and defunding the police and really thinking about how we can reconstruct our police departments. But one piece that I don't feel like that we touch on as much that's been brought up in this conversation is just how overwhelmingly present the patriarchy is and how it continues to impact each and every one of our lives every single day. And we're not talking about the cultural shift that needs to happen, because it's one thing for a system to change, but in order for a system to change and for it to be sustainable, and I think also for it to grow and fully encompass what the community wants, there has to be a cultural shift. In my opinion, there's a large level of cognitive dissonance between, there are these people that are like, no, patriarchy is bad. We don't want to continue on with these lies fed to us by people that I guess are like, I don't know, are not even parts of our lives as the truth. And now I think for the first time really ever in our history, we have the opportunity to talk about things in a way that we didn't have the opportunity to. Like, even think about, I don't know, 50 years ago, it would be foreign that you, BJ, an openly gay woman, and a white man, Sam, and a biracial woman, myself, would be able to even come in and have these conversations. And so I guess I just wonder what else needs to be done from the community standpoint to kind of foster that cultural shift that needs to happen in order for us to really live lives that are, I guess, on par with what we say that we value. Like, I, for one, I'm like, oh, the patriarchy, I hate the patriarchy, but I'm not going to lie and say that I don't fall into gender stereotypes, or that I don't believe some of these lies that I've been told, because that's, again, it would be a lie. I'm very much still ingrained in this, even though from a conscious level, I know that I want to be disengaged. So I don't know if any of us have the answer to that today, but that's what's got me thinking, like, what do we need to do in order to foster a cultural shift? And are there things that we could do as individuals to help, I guess, I don't know, be little catalysts as we can in our own personal lives?
I want to mention a group that's doing some really good work, and it's called A Call to Men. I was telling BJ about this group. They are a nonprofit that is about empowering and elevating Black women. So it's
Oh, I like that. I'm all about that.
they're trying to retrain men, is what they're trying to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's really about that toxic masculinity, trying to retrain men, and they're doing some amazing work.
That's so exciting. Yeah, I've gotten a couple of emails this month that said that February was Teen Awareness Dating Month, which I did not know.
Yes.
And I've been watching this show on Discovery Plus called Web of Lies that really talks about a lot of teen violence, like interpersonal violence, that teenagers do to each other using the internet. And I guess, I mean, I'm only 26 years old, so I definitely dated on the internet. I've probably, unfortunately, sent a sext or 5. Thankfully, I never had to deal with any of the repercussions of that stuff happening, but this is still so new to us all anyway. So it's really, I think, important and interesting that teachers, and I don't even know, like our public school system is allowing you to come in and really talk about those different things. As far as parents that would like to consider talking about consent and teaching that to their children a little bit earlier on, what are some suggestions as far as resources would you have for them?
Ooh, that's a good question. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any books or anything like that, but if they're local, I would say call me, contact me. I would love to put something together for younger people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Andrew, you got anything?
Now that I could think of, I think some of the things that you were mentioning just kind of brought me back to like things that I would see usually in high school or in the latter part of my middle school years, and seeing like pamphlets on domestic violence and things that they were offering resources. But other than the pamphlets that no one touched because they always stayed full, I don't think that they weren't doing what you were doing, the work that you were doing specifically on the groundwork, doing what needs to be done. Because I think even if you don't experience it, it's important to be aware of it, and so that you know what to do and how to get those resources to get the help that you need, or even to be able to tell someone else about the help that they can get.
Thank you. And I think people are shocked sometimes that I go to middle school, but these kids, it starts in middle school.
They know.
They know, yeah. I think it's something like 1 out of every 4 Black girl has experienced assault. 1 out of every 4.
Wow.
At that age. Yeah, it's a tragedy.
Wow.
So there's
just because of the over sexualization of Black women in general, and specifically Black girls, and this narrative that they don't need to be protected. So
exactly.
I wish that you could start earlier. I mean, in my opinion, middle school sounds a bit late to be talking about consent. And I mean, obviously you hope parents are having these conversations with their kids. I think it's a part of being an emotionally regulated human being. It's understanding that you have the power to say no. And when you understand your power to say no, you also respect other people's power to say no.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, there's pushback from both the school and parents that I'm even going into middle schools.
Wow.
Yeah, sure. People don't want people to come in and talk about sex. They just don't. Mm-hmm. As if like, it's not happening, la, la, la,
Haven't we seen that already?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting that we're still kind of having that. We don't want y'all talking about sex conversation. That's just, I mean, I get it, and I'm not, I don't think I should be.
You don't want to talk about it either.
Yeah, come on, y'all. I mean, and you talking about elementary school, some of these kids are, they doing stuff that I never think about doing. So we need, it's just anyway, so.
Go
ahead, Andrew.
But I was going to say I wanted to add something, but I think Sam was probably going to add to this as well too. But kids these days are getting older at the younger age, so it's like I think it's probably you can blame technology and things that they see and the impact that media has on the things that they digest mentally throughout the day. But I think that's why it's so important to start at the young age, because of the things that they have easy access to. And you'd be surprised. Like I watch my, how old is he, 2-year-old godson, knowing exactly what to tap on an iPad, exactly in what order, and know what he has to search up at 2.5 years old. So just seeing how they're able to pick up certain things, I know that the curriculum that you're teaching is necessary.
So Sam,
or a lot of people don't talk about it. Like I know that we were earlier talking about like just like the implications of sexting. When I was in middle schools, like 2006, 2007, nobody talked about it. The first time I heard people talking about like sending nudes was when they were like, yeah, if you send nudes, like you could be a registered sex offender. And that scared the living crap out of me. So I didn't do it, but it wasn't from a place of empowerment of like, oh, okay, like why should I not do this? Or what are the risks other than you could be a sex offender? And I was like, oh my God, like this is really scary. So I'm glad that people have this resource in you, somebody that's going to be honest and present to them kind of all different sides of what an action's consequence can be. Because I wonder if I would have made different choices. Not, thank God, I've been so fortunate. None of those decisions have implicated me for the long term, thank God. But unfortunately, a lot of people cannot say the same thing. And I mean, I don't know that my life would have been necessarily different, but for so many people, I wonder how much different it could have been had they just been able to have these conversations. Just as we were talking about with the sergeant from the last episode, we have to be willing to have the hard conversations. And we also have to be willing to sit with the hard and uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the work that you're doing, Sam. It seems like you're not into sugarcoating or explaining away these negative feelings. Instead, you're giving people permission, probably for the first time in their lives, to really feel all of their feelings, saying that the feeling itself is not bad or negative, but how you, I guess, maybe express it could be.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we all do our best. I also like to teach them that jealousy is natural. Like, a lot of people experience jealousy because these kids, they think that getting a barrage of text is a sign of love. Like, they don't know that that's, there's codependence, there's lack of boundaries, that it's stalking. Stalking feels like romance when you're, 12. So we've got to educate everybody on that level too.
So how do we get you? How does a school, when somebody's folks are listening to this, what's the work to get you into a school? I mean, what does that look like?
It looks like contacting me. Get me at sam@durhamcrisisresponse.org. I'm happy to go wherever. I live for it. So yeah, please contact me. Sam Peterson.
Go ahead, do it again.
Sam Peterson at DCRC. And you can catch me at my phone number, 919-909-6077. So please contact me.
How many schools are you in currently?
Right now I'm in 3, but it varies because I'm teaching these curriculums in 3 schools, but a lot of schools I just do like a one-off. I'll come and do a presentation, for instance, on sexting or technology or campus violence or things like that. So I'm in a variety of schools at all times.
So, it's always I don't want to say, but it's always we've got so much to jam into a day for the students, so we can't add one more thing that may be beneficial to them. I mean, I've gotten that, based on my business, there's just not enough hours. We love what you do, but don't, because they're trying to get stuff done. They got to get testing done. They got to make sure. So where are you in the day of a student? I mean, when do you come in? How are they getting you in to get access to the kids? Or where are they jamming you in? I won't call them, maybe not jamming you in, but what's the space that they're able to provide for you to come in and get these sessions done?
Typically, it's during health class.
Oh, okay.
That
makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, pretty natural fit.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
I have a question before I forget. I'm so sorry, BJ, and I'm gonna shut up. This is the last thing I have to ask. If you could give us, because I know it would be hard for us to really, I guess, help you fulfill your mission of educating as many kids as possible if we're not educators ourselves. So I was thinking about how can we help you do the work? And this question came to mind. If you could give us one piece of advice to give the young people in our lives about navigating toxic relationships and interpersonal violence, what would that be?
Well, this is going to sound cliche, but I always say start with yourself. Examine yourself for biases. We all have them. Where am I iterating those messages? Because we all do it. Where am I sharing these messages and of gender nonsense or whatever? And then I think this. It's just important to listen to kids where they're at and really listen. I don't have some magic nugget to share that's going to change anybody's life, but I think what I've learned is to just be quiet and listen. They know a lot more than I do about what they need. That's for sure.
Yes,
That's
I
probably
love.
not helpful.
No, that's so helpful. It is, because I think that one thing that adults do, researchers do, doctors do, people in power tend to do, is we tend to not value people as the experts of their own story. And in doing that, we miss a lot of that inherent wisdom that sometimes people just need to hear repeated in a different way. I find that a lot of my answers that I'm looking for and searching for are literally the exact things that I'm saying. I just needed somebody to repeat it back to me a little bit differently. So that's really powerful, regarding people as the own narrators and experts of their own story, period, full stop, no ands, no buts. And that's a hard thing to do. It's giving up control and admitting that even as a person in a position of power and as an educator, that you don't have all the answers.
Andrew, you got anything?
Not that I can think of. I think this is very helpful, and it kind of helped me understand my biases and what I can do in my position. I'm not a parent as well too, but I know that I do interact with students. So understanding about what things to listen for as well too. I wanted to ask, what advice would you give for, how do I want to, because I ask and I listen too hard sometimes, I forget my question, but I wanted to ask, what advice would you give for people who, I guess, work with kids or work with students on an occasional basis, to what to listen for specifically, in regard to being able to know what triggers, that if they're experiencing certain crises?
Yeah, kids will let you know. I wish I had a way of explaining this. Kids will let you know if they've been abused. I think you have to let your guard down and be able to receive the cues that they're giving, because we want to block that stuff. We don't want to know that, it's too horrible sometimes to appreciate that kids are going through sexual assault and sexual violence at home. So I have learned to be really open and listen hard for cues that something might not be up. Something might be up at the home. I had a young girl that, we took aside after class one day who, we were concerned about, because we could pick up just something was not right with this kid. And I wish I could identify what it was, but she seemed upset. She seemed upset by the information, which kids usually aren't. And it turned out that she was terrified that her parents were going to be deported, which isn't assault, but, there was a real, genuine fear there that I could at least be a supportive adult around.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that, because I did a presentation at a school, and that had a lot of kids who were in school, knowing that the possibility of them going back home, that ICE might have taken their parents while they were at school. So
Yeah.
they're sitting in school trying to do what they can do, but they're just like, I don't know whether dad and mom are going to be home because we're not here. There's all this other stuff going on. So I appreciate, it's just kids today, it's a lot going on, more so than, that we probably even are aware of. So anyway, this has been a really good conversation, Sam. Thank you so much for saying yes. This has been some good stuff. I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life at some point.
Same, BJ. Same.
You have to
Yeah.
say IRL.
What?
You can't say
Yes.
IRL. You can't say in real life. Like, that's too old. Come on. Aren't we talking about technology right now?
Yes.
God.
Could I
I
say
would love to meet you.
So Sam, do you have anything you want to leave us with? Any wisdom that you'd like to leave our guests with before we sign off?
Just what I've said, to check yourself. I know I have to do this all the time. Check myself for biases. And they're like ants in a sugar cupboard. They just creep in. All of a sudden they're there. So
Yeah.
that's all I know to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check our own selves first, right? Check our
Hmm.
own selves first. Guys, you got anything you want to say before we take an exit? Good.
I think the last thing that I have to say, and I had this in the chat, this is why I love the conversations around consent, because they teach us to go back into our bodies. And Sam, when you were saying earlier you weren't able to articulate what you recognized in her that indicated that something was going on, but our bodies can recognize trauma in other bodies. And when we're teaching consent and when we're telling people to go back to their bodies, it teaches us to really honor the wisdom that our bodies hold. One of my favorite quotes about trauma that really put into perspective kind of what you're dealing with when you're actively just trying to mitigate the effects of trauma is that what the mind doesn't remember, the body does. And the body holds so much wisdom that our conscious minds don't. And so that was a really beautiful reminder, Sam, from you to really trust my instincts, trust my body. And I think that that's something that we all can take away so that we can be a more safe place for kids as we're navigating these different spaces.
Thank you.
And if I can get your message into my curriculum, you know, if there's something I can share with the kids, what would that be?
I think for me personally, as someone that grew up, I mean, I think I was probably the last generation of kids that grew up with and without cell phones and computers and social media. When you're consuming that much all of the time from different perspectives, it can really impact your, I guess, like your sense of self and kind of what you think that you are. And so I would say to those kids that you are okay just as you are. Um, and that there's no shame in being authentically exactly who you are in this moment. I wish that I would have known that. There were so many moments in childhood where I wish that I had a safe adult to reach out to, or wish that I had a place to go for information or advice. And I would have been able to do that if I'd been able to overcome the shame that came with making certain decisions. And now as an adult, knowing that I'm okay authentically as I am right now in my body, this exact version of me, I experience a lot less shame. And because of that, I'm able to reach out for help. I've been telling myself this all day. We're not meant to exist in silos. And we need each other. We're all just walking each other home. But you're okay as you are right now. You're okay. You're more than enough. And it does get better. I swear when I turned 13, I lost my mind. And then around 18, it's like I gradually got it back. I still haven't gotten it all back. But it's hard. It's hard. I would never wish being a teenager on anybody ever again.
Thank you so much, Harmony. Thank you.
Absolutely.
BJ, is there something I can integrate in my curriculum of your platform here?
You know, I'm not real sure. I think you just listening, I think, is just listening to yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just to echo what she just said, just be who you are in that moment. So yeah, I like what you're doing. Obviously, I think it's great. But yeah, the only thing that I would say is just listen, you know, be a part of the conversation, you know what I'm saying? Just be a part of the conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Just be a part of it. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. It's been such a treat.
Yeah, thank you for saying yes. And I got you sent me the thing about, you know, a call to men. I haven't reached out yet, but I do plan to. I may even invite them on because I really like that.
Great.
Yeah. So Andrew, do you have anything? I know, you know, Harmony's been kind of, you know, doing her thing.
Doing my thing. Oopsie.
Yeah. So if not, you got anything?
I'm just gonna echo something that Harmony said that made me think. Actually, I was gonna say that exact something similar to what she was gonna what she mentioned. I think that sometimes in our society, well, not sometimes, all the time, I'm like plastered with the media that I take or intake throughout the day about how individualistic our society is, and it trains our brains to think that we have to do everything by ourselves. And because I see a lot as I scroll TikTok and all the other channels that I search about this phrase that like says no one's coming to get you. Like you have to get yourself up in the morning, do these things, complete your dreams, all these other things. So it pushes this very I have to do it alone mentality on people of my age and older and younger as well too. So I just wanted to say I understand how important self-care is, and I wanted to say I don't think that you can self-care yourself to healing. And I think that's very important that I had to realize myself. And my friend, when I would go through things, as we all do as adults, have to understand that it's okay to reach out for help.
Yes. Yes. That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Thanks
Y'all are
again.
amazing.
Oh, thank you, Sam. You're good for our egos. Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody who's listening, and hope you'll join us again. And Sam, thanks for being here. And shout out to my friends at Durham Crisis Response Center. I love you guys. It's a great organization, a lot of friends there, and I'm always going to support them in this community. So as always, stay safe, stay well, peace.